Hello, and welcome to another video from the only source of information that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse, but actually enjoy it. And today, I'm here with Courtney. We're talking about, we don't know yet, but yeah. Oh, yeah. Say hello.
Hello.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, we don't know. We've got a whole list of things we could talk about. And you want to talk about the war, this thing that's going on?
Which war? The war in Ukraine and Russia?
Yeah, that one there. Which is actually, I was reminded yesterday, I did a video series called Melchizedek where I talked about the very first war ever fought by humans called the War of Peleg that's mentioned in the Bible. And how if you go back to the War of Peleg, you can actually follow, like, that war led to another war, which led to another war, which led to the war we're currently experiencing. All human wars are basically the same war. It's a war to supply ritual human sacrifices to Lord Satan. No, all this other stuff that we hear is just nonsense. So basically, I don't delve too deep into the causes of wars and all that stuff. I pretty much know that war is just evil.
Well,
It's just
that
large.
the war is evil, so you know that it's mostly for harvesting the souls and things like that. Like it's a ritual. Wars are rituals.
Yep. Yeah, if you go back and look at all the requirements, like the Israelites were told that they had to sacrifice humans. That's what they were told. Mm-hmm. But then after that, it said you can use cattle for substitute. God will accept a cattle substitute. So then it gives a long list of, the animals that you sacrifice have to be without blemish. They have to be young. They have to be healthy. And so these replacement sacrifices basically represent what war is, where you take your youngest, healthiest males, which is what they had to sacrifice, and you actually do the human sacrifice. Mm-hmm. So anyways, you said that you had a little bit unique perspective on this war. What makes your perspective unique?
Maybe my unique perspective is kind of like how I was telling you, how they use that to wipe away history and to kind of do like that global reset people talk about, and to bring in, the new world order, as some people say. And, Biden's big agenda was, and a lot of people, is that green agenda, renewable energy and all the things. And, it just so happens that this war conveniently, squeezes everybody's resources. It just so happens that all of a sudden there's not enough gas to go around. We got to have the renewable energy. And like today, he was talking about he's going to get Europe off natural gas. They're not even going to use. They're not going to need diesel fuel. They're not going to need natural gas. We're going to get them off 100% renewable energy because of the war in Russia. And so I feel like, I was like, how convenient. And what is it? The wheat shortages, that affects Europe. But, Canada and the United States are big wheat producers, right? I think we're like second and third. Russia had just happened to be the first, or over there, Ukraine. And so, now they can't have the wheat. So we have all the wheat. And we also have we're like the number one oil, and that's what they need. And then we also have all the natural gas.
Even the things that I do know, because sometimes I do watch the news. Mm-hmm. I don't intentionally do it, but I'll be doing something and suddenly I see some kind of a little thumbnail and I'll click on it and I get stuck. Mm-hmm. And then I walk away with this new knowledge. But I have to sit back and say, you know what? Every piece of new knowledge I've ever gotten off of TV or the internet has proven to be a lie. Mm-hmm. So I really probably don't have new knowledge. I've just listened to another one of their lies. Yeah. So that's why you hardly ever see me make a video on YouTube where I talk about current events or social political things, because then a year later I
chalk it all up to propaganda. And, they'll go on and say everything out of Russia is propaganda, but like almost everything out of our government is propaganda. So it's really hard to sit there and point fingers when like every government does it. They all do it. And you can't read an article and take it word for word, or even the press statements. Like I primarily stick to like their readouts, not news, not Fox and ABC. Like I watch straight from the White House, or like I read it straight from them. And it's bad as far as they just lie. They lie about everything, but you can discern kind of the truth. You can kind of see what they were talking about. Like he talked about food shortages yesterday. He's like, there's going to be food shortages. You're going to have to embrace it. And he goes, well, for Europe. But he's lying. We're going to have food shortages here too. He just can't come out and say it. He said it's going to be hard. I'm like, okay. Back when he was elected, he kept saying how it was going to be a long, cold winter, and I guess I thought you were referring about the virus and all that stuff, but no, it's because we're going to have long, cold winter because of COVID and the war, and people aren't bringing their boats for the ports because the other thing that he was talking about was sanctioning China, and we get most of our stuff from China.
Yeah, it's like when you look at history, like most people, here's just the way it works. I think I already talked to you about this. It's like when World War II was over and we went back and looked at how things worked, it's like World War II was basically a madman in Germany trying to conquer the world. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I got to thinking, he lost the war, so he can't defend himself. He committed suicide in the bunker or whatever. So he can't.
Supposedly.
Right. So, but the whole thing is, World War II was not started by a madman trying to conquer the world. It was started by about a dozen madmen trying to conquer the world. It's not like Stalin was a good guy or Churchill was, seeking world peace. These were really bad people. Roosevelt, Hirohito, they were all psychopaths. The thing is, Hitler lost the war, so he gets to be the scapegoat. And on top of that, he made some really poor fashion decisions. If you look at an old like American uniform, the Soviet Union uniform, the soldiers basically had like a camouflage shirt and pants on. The Germans had these like skulls and crossbones on their uniforms and all that kind of stuff. So even if they'd have won the war, they'd have had a hard time explaining all of that evil paraphernalia they were toting around, Yeah. So but if you look at it, now that it's over with, you can look back and see that World War II was not good guys versus bad guys. It was a whole bunch of bad guys fighting for position. Mm-hmm. And that's every war. You go back, World War I, Revolutionary War, Civil War, all the wars that were fought in Europe, they're all basically just bad people struggling to get more power.
Well, it's so hard as we were talking about discerning and all the propaganda, it's really hard to figure out what's actually going on because we're not there. I don't have family there. I don't have friends there. Both sides, Ukrainian, Europeans, and Russians, all of it. Everybody I know lives here. So I don't have the viewpoint, but then like you go online and you'll read, they're talking about, well, the reason Russia was doing this to Ukraine is because Ukraine has been buddying up with the West. They want to be, and you can look at like their towns, and it's very European. Like their communities are or cities, I guess, are laid out just like a European city. And the architecture is very similar, the culture is very similar, and they're very Western. They're very modern. And Russia, the culture is like the exact opposite. Like they're more traditional. They're more like, stay at home. They're not so much everybody, obviously, but like Russia as a country is very conservative, where Ukraine was liberal, or was becoming very liberal. And that seems to be like the thing, is that they're rejecting the United States. Russia doesn't want that in their culture. They don't really care for the West, the types of food we eat, the stuff that we watch on TV, it's trash to them. And so I can see where, they're going to fight to the death about it. They don't want that in their country. They're going to fight to the death about it. And like you've always talked about, it's just better to stay out. Like if it comes to our home or whatever, I'm just gonna try to find a way out of it because I'm not involved. I don't know anybody in there. I can't do anything about it. Like, I don't know. What do you even? I've never seen a war. I'm young enough to where I've never seen war up close and personal, but I know I don't want it, and I don't want to send my kids to it. I got 5 kids to raise, and some of them are going to be drafting age soon. I don't want any.
Yeah.
I don't want any 18 to 25. I'm about to have me some 18-year-olds, and they're going to be poached, I'm sure, for the military.
There's no way of knowing what they're going to do. They may reinitiate the draft. They may not. They may just use so much propaganda that people draft themselves, basically.
That's what they're doing. There's a lot of people that are signing up to go and volunteer for Ukraine. Like whole troops are going over, thousands of people. And then they expedited like passports and stuff so you can go do it. So yeah, they're very much like voluntary service. I can't relate to that mentality, but some people, a couple weeks ago left to go.
When I look at these wars, one of the things that the word democracy, it comes from the Greek word daimon kriteo, which means ruled by the demons, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in English, we're told it's demos kriteo, which means ruled by the people. The problem with that is that the word demos means the children of the demons. So it's not ruled by the people. It's ruled by the people who are ruled by demons. That's what democracy means. There's no way of getting around the basic fact of how the language works. That's what it means. And so you go back and look, like at all of these other wars, World War II, World War I, Vietnam, Korea, the United States has always been like, we have to defend freedom and democracy.
Yes, it's in their best interest for us to come and help.
Right.
And Ukraine needs us. Okay?
Right. Here's the weird thing about it.
We have to.
If you go back in history, like the Vietnamese people, the Korean people, the Soviet Union people in World War II, all of them were like, we have to fight this war because we have to preserve our freedom and democracy.
Yes.
And it's like the people in America think they're the only ones that practice freedom and democracy. Every country on earth considers themselves free and democratic. And so even right now, I saw an interview with that guy, Gorbachev. Isn't that his name? The Soviet Union leader that had the birthmark on his head.
Well, he's like a spokesman for them. He represents them at the UN? Maybe not the UN.
Oh, no. I don't know. He's not. I know he's 91 years old now. Mm-hmm. And they were interviewing him. And he was real careful how he chose his words. And, as far as, world leaders are world leaders. None of them are any good. But Gorbachev seems like, a reasonable man when he's talking. Mm-hmm. And they were asking him about how he felt about Putin's war. Like it was this one guy has decided that the earth is going to go to war. And Gorbachev, his thing was, well, we're a democratic nation. And you don't understand, when you're a democratic nation and the people demand something, if you're going to be the leader of a democratic nation, you have to recognize the wants of the people. And Putin lives in a country where the people want the Ukraine stopped. Mm-hmm. So he's like, he's up against a wall. He's got to do this. Now, and if you watch the network news in the United States, they're showing all the people of Russia going, trying to stop Mr. Putin. That's not true. In the United States, when there's a war, there's always people that want to stop it. Every country always has people that can stand against war.
Yeah.
But the reality is, everybody in this country is being steered to want this war, and all the people in Russia are being steered to want this war. Everybody thinks they're defending freedom and democracy. Mm-hmm. Never mind that they're spending 40 hours a week on their feet behind a cash register at Walmart. They really honestly believe they're free.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
It's terrible. But like I said, that's why it feels more like agenda. Like it was already pre-planned to have this war. I don't know if, like you talked about Satan's empire. I don't know if the powers couldn't harvest enough souls from, the virus, which was it was a chemical bioweapon, supposedly from one of our own labs. So here again, the United States with this malicious attack, accidentally taking out all these people, but apparently it wasn't enough for Satan. So yeah, they have to have a war. They're already going in the thousands with that. And who knows how many more, it's now they're talking about more bombs and things, just to get the people all fear. Cause that's another thing that Satan harvests is fear and worry, because if you're walking straight in the light and with Jesus, you shouldn't have any cares and worries, because you're going with the flow and you're staying with him, and whatever happens, you're going to be taken care of. Don't fret about it. And I feel like that's what Satan wants, is he wants you to be concerned. He wants us to be all upset and, thinking about it, because as long as your thoughts are there, you're giving him your energy. You know what I mean? And so
I'm going to end up repeating myself like in every video for a while. I keep talking about this cycle of bullying. If you're filled with the Holy Spirit, if you're a really good person and you recognize yourself as a smaller part of the greater whole, that greater whole being the universe, not your country, not your race, not your religion, but you're a part of this universe. You recognize that. You're going to get bullied. You're going to be an outcast. You're never going to really have friends. You're never going to be able to enjoy life, because there's always going to be somebody trying to make you as miserable as possible. When the world is at war, my heart wants to stop that. I want to save all these people from themselves. But I mean, logically, if I look back on it, those kids that are killing each other in the Ukraine, if I lived in the Ukraine, those would be the same kids that beat me up every day when I was in school. So, when you find out that there's a group of these people killing each other, okay, that's great.
No, see, I look at it more like a cat fight. When a cats are fighting, you don't just walk up in there, because you're going to get scratched up. You just let them do it. Or, dogs, or like any other wild animal. If I see bears out in the woods fighting, I'm not going to go try to break it up. At a distance, right. I'm going to keep an eye on it, and hopefully they'll stop and they go their different ways, and I'm going to be sitting there going my own way too. But I'm not going to put myself in a situation where it's team 1 and team 2, because I have no interest in it. I'm not going to work up my feelings about it. I'm not going to lose sleep about it. There would have to be like military going down my street for me to start getting concerned. And if I start seeing that, since it would be on my street and I'm seeing tanks roll down and whatever, I think that's when I would take it a little bit more seriously. And the same thing, they're probably going to be doing that in town. Nobody's going to be coming out to the woods, roughing it in the hills, looking for me. So just go there, camp out, chill out, whatever. But I think everybody, obviously, most people that are in that way of thinking, have their plan, right? And so that's what I look at. I look at a couple of animals fighting, and I don't want to get clawed up, so I just kind of stay out of it.
Yeah, well, for me, it's like I've got, if I look out here and I see the world going downhill, I go in my house and open the fridge and I go, oh, plenty of food, nothing to worry about. But with these people, they kind of make themselves believe in stuff that isn't real. They'll go out and see a tank going down the road, or they'll even just turn on the TV and see a tank on TV. Mm-hmm. And they go in the house, they open the fridge, and just like my house, their refrigerator is full, and they'll go, "Oh my God, we're out of food!" Like, how can you? They see these imaginary things,
yeah,
and they get themselves worked up over it, and then they in their head they're like, "There's a tank on TV. My refrigerator is empty. Somehow their empty refrigerator, which isn't empty, is related to that tank on TV." So people go down this road in their head that isn't real.
Yeah, and it's like a crisis movie. They're waiting for it to be a big giant deal, but it's really not that big of a deal. It's like a small fry. Like we had that here because I live near a railroad track, and they're always sending stuff south. I don't know exactly where it goes, but they'll send like those big military trains, right, just full of like all kinds of stuff, like equipment basically, but it's usually like busted up equipment that needs to go and get fixed. Like it's not usable. They're not transporting it to make a base or anything. Like it's going to get fixed. but you'll see it. It'll be like 5 miles long. There's been longer ones, like long trains full of these equipments, and people will be looking at it and staring it down, talking about, war's coming, war's coming. I'm like, those are broken. They're just gonna go fix this. They hauled all these broken equipment, like it didn't teleport there. You have to haul it, and they have to haul it on trains. And so you're gonna see this stuff on trains being transported. Like, that doesn't mean war is about to break out, guys.
When you and I are together, we're always talking like this. We're reasonable. We're thinking things through. We're not just like, our team says this, so let's just repeat that over and over again. But to the outsiders, an outsider listening to this video right now is going to say, those two are kooky.
No, I'm not picking sides. I won't pick sides. And I've always thought about that with like voting or something, because, I don't participate in the system in that way. But then I shouldn't have to choose sides. I don't want anybody's sides. Like, I'm in it for me and mine, my people. And outside of that, I don't know, because I'm not going there. It's hard for me to even relate to Ukraine. Like I said, I don't know anybody over there. So it might as well be a fake country. I'm not even sure that continent's there. Could be a movie. Like, I don't know anything about it. I've never met a Russian. I've never met a Ukrainian. I've never met a Chinaman. And so, for all I know, our government uses those stories, like you said, like, I talk about, to harvest the fear and harvest the stuff, and those aren't even real. And I'm sure people are going to watch it and be like, she doesn't believe in China. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's the idea that it could be propaganda, and I'm not getting upset about it.
It wouldn't be the first time.
Long record of bad juju with our country. So.
Yeah. Not just our country. I mean, when people think that America is different than, Germany or Japan or whatever. And so you look at the crazy stuff the Japanese did to their people and the Germans did to their people, and you go, wow, I'm glad I don't live there. But the thing is, we know about that stuff because our government publishes stories about that stuff. The fact that our government does not publish stories about all the bad stuff our government doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There were, like, during World War II, there were really, really bad atrocities committed by every side. The British committed atrocities, but you'll never hear about those. You'll always hear about the atrocities that were committed by the opposing team. But when you see these fake stories, I mean, that really happens. They do make fake stories and put them on the internet, put them on the news, and you don't know which ones are fake. You have to make a judgment call. So the thing I do is don't watch any of them.
Yeah. Well, I always take it with our government. I'm like, you never forget Waco. Like, I was young when it happened, but like, never forget, because it will happen again. It happens still. They'll come in and, they have an idea of who you are, what they think, because, they fly those big satellite balloons over the United States, and it collects all the data. It's an all-seeing eye, basically, and it's over there every day. And so, yeah, they can collect all this data. They make a picture of you on the computer about what you are and what you're looking at and what you do. And then all of a sudden you're a terrorist or something. And they can come in, you don't have a chance. Like, there's no chance. Once the government puts their little laser target on you, you're gone. And I don't want to give them a target. You know what I mean? Like, I try to say, I do the right thing. I fly right. I don't get involved in politics or local community stuff. I don't want to give them any reason to come knocking on my door. There's no reason.
Well, everybody pretty much has that policy, but they don't follow it because they'll do it anyway. I'm going to stay out of it, but I'm going down to picket the courthouse because of high taxes or whatever. You're not staying out of it. If you're down there complaining about your oppression, then the oppressors are going to be pissed at you. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it is.
Not doing the protest stuff. Don't do that.
Yeah, people think that they really believe that in a democracy, people are interested in what they believe. They're like, oh, we'll start a union, or we'll get some equal rights for women or whatever, as if somehow those events can be steered by the public. They're not. It's like when the United States decides they want more women workers, then suddenly they get small groups of women to fight for their rights. It's not like that actually happened. It was an orchestrated event so that people think they're empowered, that they're the ones that steered the government to make that possible.
Yeah, well, paid actors, you get stuff like that. Even with those protests that we had like last summer and the summer before, that was one of the issues is that, what do they call them, provocateurs were coming into some of these protests, and that's who was basically busting out the windows and causing all the trouble, setting the fire. It wasn't the people actually there to protest the cause, but these rogue groups that probably weren't even involved in anything other than trouble was coming in and messing it up for everybody, making the whole thing look bad, And so I imagine that throughout history, they've done that several times with different protests. And, that's not a new phenomenon. It's probably been going on since Roman times,
Forever.
It's always been like that. You want to think that our century's special, but really people have always been like this. It just seems like everybody's kind of been a little slutty and a little funny, and there's always been drugs, there's always been alcohol, there's always been the weirdo in the corner, that's always been like that. I have a little thing that from the Ukraine-Russia side about the propaganda and appealing to people's emotions. One of the things that they did with like the propagandists were apparently Europeans are very attached to like dogs. Like they like small dogs, right? And so as a culture, they're really pulls on their heartstrings seeing a lot of like animals die, especially dogs. Well, and so some of the stuff that was coming out was like Russia was, bombing these dog sanctuaries and like rescues and stuff, and was showing all these like burned up animals. And so people over here in the West, oh my gosh, the dog? You can't burn up dogs, you can't do that. And then over in Russia, they're really attached to cats. And so someone on the Telegram channels, I was translating them, talking about like Ukrainians were setting cats on fire and stuff. And so it gets Russians all jazzed because they love cats. Like, you can't mess with the cats, man. You can't burn cats up. Like, that's going to start a war. Like, we're going to. And so they use your animals too. And, it was just a picture of like a burned up kitten. And like, yeah, who's going to be, let's catch the guy that did that. You can't burn up kittens. That's wrong. Like, and so, I'm sure there is, but, was it intentional or accidental? Who knows? And so because you don't know the backstory of it, I try not to get too involved, but they do that. They know what groups of people enjoy certain things. Like, I was reading about, all the sanctions on Russia, and nothing really, they're all kind of like me, kind of middle class, up and coming young people, right? That's the majority of the population in Russia. And so one of the things that really impacted them with all the sanctions was losing IKEA. They shut down the IKEAs, and that's when it started hitting the common folk that this is going to be bad. And I was like, I can relate to that. I mean, I don't really shop at IKEA, but, like losing your comfort store, the store that you enjoy shopping at, like the one damn store and you're taking it away. Like, wow.
Yeah, the only thing I can afford.
Yeah. Can't have it.
Well, here's something that's always been like I've always gotten a chuckle out of is that whenever there's a war and it's over with, they always round up the losers and they convict them of war crimes.
Oh, they're already setting that up. Every soldier that gets captured, the United States came out, I guess today, was and definitely said that all soldiers in the Russian army that gets captured are going to be tried for war crimes. And I was like, okay, good luck with that.
Yeah, well, if you go back and look, like there were times when 100 soldiers, 100 American soldiers were captured, they surrendered, and the Germans just killed them.
Yeah.
And the reason the Germans killed them is because they didn't have the resources to be toting these guys off to a prison of war camp. Mm-hmm. They had to keep fighting the war. They did not have the option of leaving those guys alive. Well, the problem is that the Americans did that too. They rounded up bunches of Germans and they just killed them to keep from having to tote them back to a prisoner of war camp. Mm-hmm. That really happened. It's not like my crazy conspiracy theorist said. That really happened.
They're doing it now. It was last week. Last week, Ukraine said that any fighters like the plane fighters that they capture from Russia's side were going to be killed. There was never going to be a trial. So that's already happening on Ukraine's side. And then the last week too, Russia, that Mariupol, that one of those coastal towns, it's one of the last coastal towns that they're trying to take. It's basically a flat wasteland, but there were like 1,000 people left, right? And they were providing a safe corridor out of the country, conveniently into Russia. And when they got to Russia, they got their phones taken, they got all their identification taken off of them, and then they were shipped to a holding facility in the middle of Russia, in like way country Russia. And I was like, oh, that's not messed up at all. Like, okay, so you escaped being bombed to basically go to like you don't even know where you are, you can't contact anybody, and you don't even have your ID. So like you're just you have your person, like you have your skin and I guess your brain. Like they took their clothes. It was just women and children mostly, but they took everything they had and shipped them off into the middle of the country. Scary. I would have never done. See, I can't relate. I would never get in a line to do that. You know, I just can't see how you would ever. Oh, humanitarian corridors provided by Russia. Let's go through them. No,
well, you know, here's the thing: is like, what is the difference between a war and a war crime? It's like if you read, they've got these volumes and volumes of laws about what is and isn't a war crime. It's like the way you kill somebody is a war crime. Now, what that means is there are ways to kill people that are okay.
Yeah.
If I'm getting killed, I'm not, as far as I'm concerned, however they kill me is a war crime.
Well, we don't need to split hairs in this department.
Yeah, that's right. You know, it's like, yeah, that bullet is a hollow point. Those aren't allowed.
Did you see the way he held his gun? It was too high over the waist.
Yeah,
that's not fair. That bullet ricocheted and killed him in the head. Like, it has to be a direct hit. Yeah, I hear you. It all seems like semantics. Like, it's all kind of just like, okay, there's rules because. Okay, so one of the reasons that Russia is going to be tried for war crimes is obviously they're bombing, you know, schools, hospitals, that nuclear facility, well, multiple nuclear facilities. You know, they're doing a bunch of stuff that's apparently bad juju.
Right.
Against the rules. But then at the same time, Ukraine is basing a lot of their military operations because they don't have like the resources, and we're giving them a ton of stuff. They don't have the facilities to hold it. They don't have buildings, and they can't build warehouses to store it. You know, like, so they're on a whim, they're using schools and hospitals and all these places to store the military equipment needed to defend the towns, which is understandable. But that also immediately becomes a target because it's holding missiles and military stuff. It becomes a target for Russia. And so on one hand, Russia is justified by, as far as war rules go, just as Russia's justified to bomb it. But then Ukraine also is justified for saying, hey, you just hit our hospitals, you douchebag. Like, they're both in the right and they're both in the wrong at the same time.
This is not a new thing. It's like every politician knows that they can do creepy, underhanded stuff, and they can steer public opinion to support them or whatever.
Mainstream news, they don't tell you that Ukraine is using these as warehouses. The schools and stuff, they'll say Russia bombed the school, but they don't tell you that Ukraine was also basing their operation out of that school. They don't tell you that part. They only tell you half of the story. But then you have to actually go and look into it, or like I've been doing. And because this war is really unique about being live streamed, like I can go on Telegram or wherever right now, or Twitter. Surprisingly, Twitter is like where I'm getting a lot of the stuff, because over there they're using that stuff. They'll sit there and they'll post videos, and it's real time. You don't need Fox News or ABC or anything, because you can literally stay up tonight and watch real-time news, about, what is it, 8 hours ahead, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a while ahead, but tonight, if you go to at midnight tonight, it's their morning. They're waking up.
Right. That's right.
But you can go on there and they have all those closed circuit TVs and you can just click on them. You can go on the Weather Channel, that windy.com, and watch their weather. They're supposed to be for watching the weather, but you can watch the military, just driving through. You don't need to watch our news. You can watch non-commentary just videos. And I was watching the security camera for that. It was a couple weeks ago, that nuclear facility that got bombed. I had been watching it pretty much all day, not intensively, but I did see when Russia took it over and Ukraine was, backed off of it. And the story was, and I was watching the bomb, sparks going everywhere. I saw the fire. But I was certain because the trucks on the property that were inside the facility were Russian. You can tell by the Z's on them.
Right.
And they were getting hit by missiles from outside, which I'm just going to assume was Ukraine on the outside of the facility. And I was watching it live stream. I knew exactly what was happening. But then later on that night, when the reports come out, the United States is saying that Russia bombed the facility. And that's not, Russia had control of the facility for hours before the missile started hitting. And so I'm just like, that's not the truth.
Right. Yeah, just to reiterate, because I want to make sure everybody understands, that was a very important point. You're watching real-time cameras of the nuclear facility in the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
You saw that that facility had been taken over by the Russians. The facility was filled with Russian vehicles that had the Z on the side of them.
Mm-hmm.
And bombs or missiles were coming in and hitting them.
Yeah, and that's when the fire started and the cameras, you can see the sparks going. I mean, literally, it was, Eric, like, it was crazy. Like the sparks on the telephone lines. I mean, everywhere. Like all the power poles were just sparking and going crazy. And it got really dark. And then I'm thinking, like, what the heck's about to happen now? Because it looked like it was about to get bad. And then all of a sudden the military comes in with these flares and they drop them all over the ground, right? And it lights up the whole place. And it's like the lights came back on, but they didn't. They didn't have power. But these flares.
Right, it was the flares.
It was the flares. And then you could see the trucks again. A lot more people came in, outside. And then it seemed to calm down a little bit and everything was over. But that's when the news reports started coming out and the story had changed. All of a sudden it was Russia was doing the missile strikes. And I was like, that's not what I saw. That's not what happened.
The Russians went in, they took over the facility, the missiles started coming in and hitting the Russians, and then the news articles come in and say Russia blew up a nuclear plant.
They cracked it. They started a fire in one of the buildings.
Yeah, and it's very obvious to anybody watching that's not what happened, but that's the way the story was steered. The reality is a nuclear facility got blown up. That's bad. Everybody involved should be held accountable because that's bad. It doesn't matter which one was dropping bombs and which ones were shooting machine guns. But the fact is, the way it gets steered, but by the time it hits the Western news, is not accurate.
Right. Well, and it helped Ukraine out quite a bit. And, it could have been planned that way. They could have planned to do that to Russia and steer the opinion, because that got everybody pretty jazzed. Well, because once they hit that nuclear, Russia hit the nuclear facility, that was not only a war crime, but then that brought the attention on a world stage that this is serious, guys. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so that's when everybody started really like, well, if they're taking out the nuclear facilities, then we got to do something about them for sure, because they're risking the world now.
There's no good guys and bad guys. We know that, but the world doesn't. And when they hear you and I talking, like when this video hits, there's going to be a lot of people that are really righteous, loving people that are going to see this, and they're going to be, thank God somebody's being reasonable. Mm-hmm. But there's going to be other people that are just typical patriots for whatever country that are going to watch this, and they're going to think you and I are evil, because we're not joining the anti-Putin team.
I think you can be anti-Putin and anti-West. anti-America. I think you can be both. I don't think you have to choose sides as far as it's just another form of idolatry. You don't have to choose any side. You don't have to. That's the thing about it. They both can be evil, and you cannot choose both of them.
We were created as humans. We were created with an instinctive understanding of the difference between right and wrong. I mean, people think you got to teach your children the difference between right and wrong. Not really. You just because kids know right and wrong at birth. They know when they're hurting someone. But we have that, and somehow they don't. These people that are killing each other, they've somehow suppressed their natural instincts not to do bad things.
Well, it's a job, right? Like a lot of the military, or at least the people that I know in the military, they do it for a job. That's the only job they could get. It helped pay for school. They're not, when they're not at work, they're just fine. They're your cousin, your friend, you know them. But once they get in uniform, yeah, it's kind of like a gear goes in their mind, and that's their work, to go and kill. They're a sniper. They drive tanks. Whatever it is, that's their job. And it has to be like a mindset. You get your mind right about it, and you just go do your work. You just get it done. It's not. I don't want to say robot, because that kind of like, I don't want to dehumanize them, but it is kind of like a learned coping mechanism for them. You shut your mind off about it. And if you're not thinking about it, you're not going to get emotional, and you're not going to change your mind. It helps, I imagine, to harden up like that.
Yeah, well, when I was in the military, we didn't have any, like, when people look at war, they've got this idea of what war is. I mean, like World War II, you have obvious what the empire recognizes as the bad guys and the good guys. But when I was in the military, they had a few of these, like, skirmishes or police actions or little minor wars or something. And I was just a sailor on a ship. I basically swept and painted and stuff like that. But our ship just happened to be down near Grenada when Grenada broke out. That was like a war. And who knows? I don't even remember, like 1984 or something. It sounded fishy. When they told us the story, I'm like, this doesn't sound like a real war. It sounds like some made up thing that some politician somewhere is angry. They're going to send us over there to do something to be bullies, just to show our strength or whatever. And I wasn't into it. I was like, okay, I don't care one way or the other. I'm on a ship. Yesterday, I was sweeping and painting during peacetime. Today, I'm sweeping and painting during a war. Doesn't really affect me.
Right.
But when they made that announcement, everybody on the ship started cheering. I'm not exaggerating. They're like, boys, we're going to finally get to show them what we can do. War has been declared on Grenada. And everybody was like, eh.
Well, yeah, because now they finally get to earn money. They were getting paid to sit around, and now they actually get to do it.
It's like you said, they had the uniform on, they had the gun in their hand.
Let's go to work.
Yep.
I'm at work. Let's work. Get it done. And it was probably more of a resources. That's why I was telling you about Russia and Ukraine. It's really convenient that the United States has wheat, gas, and oil to sell them. Like how convenient, because we're going into a recession, and we need to come up with more money, and we have a lot of stuff that we need to fund, and so war is a great moneymaker, and it just so happens there's a lot of shortages that we can help with too. So I think it's just convenient that America is, getting in the middle of something. We probably stirred the pot, and we get to come in with the fix it. I like it.
Yeah, that's basically the way every when Jesus Christ came to earth, he walked into a problem that we caused.
Mm-hmm.
He actually came with a solution. He was offering a solution to a problem that he didn't start. But every other savior that has come along in the last 6,000 years, they don't have that power. They have to start a problem with a plan in the works already of how to fix the problem that they start. Mm-hmm. And that's basically every war. If you go back and look at every war, you have a small group of very powerful people who have caused a lot of problems, and they come in and fix the problems. They present a solution, which isn't even real. When it's over with, nothing good has happened at all.
Yeah. It's exciting either way, you know.
Yeah. Well, this war thing. Okay, we had World War I, World War II. Now they're starting to talk about what's going on currently is World War III. The reality is, World War I was like 100 nations sent soldiers to a small part of the planet to kill each other. World War II was basically a whole bunch of nations sending all of their soldiers to a small part of the planet to kill each other. This war here has the potential to be the first world war, because to me, a world war is where a whole bunch of soldiers in a whole bunch of places kill each other. During World War II, there really wasn't any fighting on U.S. soil. They could talk about German submarines in the Gulf of Mexico and etc. But we really didn't participate in World War II. We sent soldiers to the extermination center to get killed. Yeah. That's all. No. But I'm hoping this really is a world war. I want to see a real world. I want to see nukes going off close enough to see the actual shape of the mushroom cloud. That's what I want to see.
No, not me.
Don't you like excitement?
Yeah, I mean, that is exciting. I don't know if I want to be close enough to a place that might get nuked. You know what I mean? Like, I'm already thinking ahead. I'm already thinking, like, I live entirely too close to the Mississippi River. I don't want to be near the railroad tracks. One of the things, because we're looking for property and everything, I look for the flight paths. I'll stay out there a minute and I'll see if there's any airplanes going across, because it's like roads in the sky. So there are certain places that they fly over, and like where I'm at right now, it's constant all day long. You could see a plane at 2 or 3 right over me at any given second, and those suckers fall out of the sky. Like, they'll just crash down. Was that one in China just the other day? Crash down.
The Bible says that Satan is the ruler of the world. 1 John 5:19, Satan's the ruler of the world. James chapter 4 and verse 4. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 4 is like, everyone who makes himself a friend of civilization is an enemy of God. This is not our opinions. This is scriptural. Yeah. And so that's the only explanation we have for why people do the bizarre stuff that they do. Our advice, we don't have to give advice. People like us know to stay out of this stuff. It's just an instinctive thing. We see people acting in a bizarre way, we stay away from them. That's what we do. But if you're one of those people that wonders what you're supposed to do, that's our suggestion. You see people doing weird stuff, stay away from them.
Yeah.
Yep. And as always, if you don't want to survive, don't listen to us.
Bye.